Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Tony, it's the best kind of show. It's the listener question show where the listeners have done our job for us and provided a rundown for the show, which is the very best kind because then we don't have to figure it out ourselves. And this is even the best kind of week because I think we have so many questions. We might have 2 listener question shows this week, which is even better than 1.
Yeah, and the other good news is when I have complaints about posting these on the message board, on the Ask Insiders message board, and not including any kind of rundown or anything, now I can. And people are like, hey, can you just give us a little something what the show's about? I'm like, can't you just give us your pre-show rundown? And it's like, we don't always have one of those. And if they do, it's a sentence here and a sentence there. You're really not going to get anything out of it. But here you get the entire questions and I can just copy and paste those.
Half the time when Tony sends me the pre-show rundown, it's just the old animated GIF of the toasters with wings. It's just like, are we talking about toast? What is today's show about? But today's show is about whatever you want it to be about, friends. So here we go. First one from our worst listener, Langdon Alger. Tom, are you like me? And do you think the NCAA should outlaw Kenny Pickett's fake slide next year? You guys are the best. But I will note that Langdon only addressed me. So when he says you guys, I assume he means you guy, which he means me. So
I see. No, I think it's plural. I see the yes.
That's a typo. So if you're unclear what Langdon is asking about here, Kenny Pickett in the ACC championship game was running. He's the quarterback for Pitt. Was running. Sort of appeared to be, going down for a slide. Wake Forest safety kind of eased up, and then he like just kind of like dipped a little bit, like he was about to slide. And then as Wake Forest safety eased up, he just jetted around him and ran for a touchdown. And it was one of those plays that at the time it was like, oh man, that was an awesome play. I wonder if someone's going to get murdered because he did that. Because here's the problem: when you do that, then the next time somebody goes to slide, what is the safety supposed to do? Because the safety can't ease up, because what if he does, what if the next person does what Kenny Pickett does? But then if you go through and hit him, well, 99 times out of 100, he is going to be sliding. So that's kind of puts the safety in a very difficult position. And I don't know what the answer is. I feel like the truly just answer would be, you can do this. But if you do this, you are free game. You are just a free target. You have no more protections for the rest of the game or the rest of the season, however you want to delineate that. That seems like that would be a just solution, although I don't think that's what, that obviously is not something they're going to put into any sort of legislation. So yeah, I don't know. I guess outlawing it is the best way to do it, because otherwise you're putting the defense in a completely impossible position.
I talked about this on the Mark Rogers show on Wednesday, and it's funny that you say that because my solution was, if you do this, the defense gets one free shot at you. And it can be at any point. I'm not saying it has to happen like a dead ball, like no running clock. Like it can happen during the game, but they do get one free shot. It could be a head shot. It could be a knee shot. Just know, like, if you're going to do this, there could be repercussions. So it's interesting that we're both on the same wavelength on that one. Of course, that will never happen. I do think it will be changed. And we talk to Bill Carollo like every year at the Big Ten Media Days, or sometimes he'll show up at Ohio State. I'm sure they are going to talk about this. And I would be pretty surprised if this isn't addressed and shut down, and whether or not they blow it dead at the first instance of like dipping or whatever. That do you have to dip below the waist? Because shoulder dipping isn't anything, that's just juking a guy. But how much dipping does a quarterback have to do, and is it also unsportsmanlike? Is it, because I don't see it as much different than when the linebackers are clapping at the line of scrimmage to try and entice somebody to snap the ball. So I think there's some deception there that is there's already an intent to deceive rule penalty in football. I think that would be part of it. And again, you got to protect players. You got to protect those poor quarterback knees, because somebody's going to hurt themselves trying to do that. And then again, the defenders, because Kenny Pickett said he saw the defender let up, so he decided not to slide. And I guess maybe the refs should have blown it dead at that point. And I think it is going to become a judgment call as well, and one that may even require instant replay. Now, this may happen 3 times all next year, and the refs and all of these committees are going to have to spend like 12 hours discussing something that might happen once or twice. But you have to now, because now it's been seen, and now it's something like, oh, I should try that. And it's like, no, you better not.
Yeah, it does. It does feel like it falls into like the intent to deceive, disconcerting signals kind of part of the rule book. I'm going to refer to the world's leading expert on dipping, Freak Nasty, who in 1997 penned "The Dip," and as he so eloquently put it, "I put my hand upon your hip. When I dip, you dip, we dip." So, would you, Tony, suggest that maybe Freak Nasty be the one who gets called in? I mean, we saw a tag team get called in to help people with I don't know, insurance or something. I don't know. It wasn't a good commercial because I don't remember what it was for, but they were called in to do I think they were making ice cream or something, but I don't think the commercial was for ice cream. Doesn't matter. Do you bring in Freak Nasty, or do we just from now on call Bill Carollo Freak Nasty? I mean, that's the other possible solution here, which I guess is a joke that works better if you're either Tony or I and you actually know Bill Carollo, have seen Bill Carollo, and recognize that he is, I don't want to say the least Freak Nasty person in the universe, but he does not demographically represent a group that you would typically refer to as Freak Nasty.
Now I'm just imagining Freak Nasty walking into the boardroom, and the person there's like, "Thank you for joining us, Mr. Nasty. What we want to talk about is," I do not know that song, Tom. So I'm just going to trust you that it is a real thing, and this is a real person, because
it is from 1997. Yes. So it is music that I still remember because it is from my college era. I guess slightly after yours, or late.
No. Come on.
Yeah. Yes.
Come on. Jeez.
Yeah, I like you calling him Mr. Nasty, because then that reminds me of Janet Jackson, which was Miss Jackson, Janet if you're nasty, so Mr. Nasty if you're nasty. I like this. we're really spiraling down the drain here. Let's just
Mr. Nasty if you're Janet.
This one from @Vango_0. Is Styles reclassifying to come earlier to Ohio State bad for Ohio State? OSU would rather have Styles ages 19 to 21 as opposed to ages 18 to 20, right?
I thought this was an interesting question, because I think they would rather have him when he's more mature, body wise, physically, all of that. But also I think they can get him there sooner now that he's there. So I don't think it's great, because he was going to be a Buckeye anyway. And I kind of agree that we're already talking about how he's not going to do anything as a freshman. Would we be saying that in 2023 if he was a true freshman? I don't think so. Like, there would be something for him. So I guess this is a bad thing, because it takes away a year that you're probably not going to get out of him. And Brian Day talks about all of these guys that you get in everything, you get back everything that you put in. I don't think that's true when you have guys who are leaving high school a year early, because you're really not expecting much from them when they should be high school seniors. So everything that you're putting into them, you're not getting back. Now, you may get enough back in those 2 or 3 years when he's starting or more mature, but you're not getting the 4 years that you thought. But again, how many guys do you actually get 4 years with? Like, the redshirt years for a lot of guys are a little like, it's not a waste, but you don't get really anything out of them. But I think it would be better for Ohio State if he didn't enroll early, didn't skip a year.
Well, I think this is a question where the answer is it depends. So for the 2022 Ohio State team, I guess it's a marginal improvement. I don't expect a lot, but whatever you get out of him is better than what you're going to get. 2023, obviously, I think it's better.
Yes.
He's got another year with the defense. He's got another year in the system. He's got another year with Coach Mick. He will be more prepared in 2023 than he would have coming straight out of high school. 2024, same deal. He's going to be better prepared, better conditioned, better everything. So 2022, 2023, 2024, it's either slightly better or significantly better for Ohio State. 2025, well, that would be a year you would expect, if on a normal schedule, that's his third year, he's potentially, that's when you're talking about potentially an All-American season, that kind of stuff. He could be in the NFL. He starts his NFL clock a year early. So that could be, if he stays around for a fourth year, sure, it's still better for Ohio State. If he doesn't, well, that's much worse for Ohio State. So this is better in the 2023 and 2024 classes for years for Ohio State. 2025 might be better, might be terribly worse, might be really like, we might be sitting here in August 2025 saying, well, if only Sonny Styles hadn't reclassified, the linebackers would be incredible right now. But instead, CJ Hicks and Sonny Styles were both first round picks in the NFL draft earlier this year, and now they have to rebuild from scratch. That's a possibility. So, yeah, I mean, short to medium term, this is better, but long term, you could have significant issues. And, this is something we didn't really talk about on yesterday's show, but none of the conversation around Sonny Styles enrolling early is centered around NIL. That's not what this is. This is not a Quinn Ewers conversation. And, as much as the Quinn Ewers stuff is getting retconned to no, actually, he was really just wanted to get in, like, okay. Do you remember we spent like weeks talking about kombucha? Does anyone remember that? Or are we just memory holding that? Like that was a decision made for off-field reasons. This is a decision that's being made for on-field reasons. I don't necessarily view this as nearly as much of a potential, like, you're losing a year of eligibility and starting your transfer clock, either mentally or just, in your head, you're starting your clock a year early for no discernible reason. This, I think, I view a little differently than that.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, because what Ohio State needs in 2023 may be a second-year Sonny Styles. That may be more valuable to them than a first year. So it's not necessarily about the length of time, but it's the moment in time where you get him that is actually the more important thing. And they may need him to be a more veteran player in 2023 and 2024. Whatever happens in 2025 happens, but it may be more important for Ohio State to get him up to speed sooner.
Yeah. Next one from our buddy Chip Minnick. What are your thoughts about Marcus Freeman's recent comments about Ohio State making the same mistake twice? And I was just going to pull that up.
Yeah, I've got it here if you want me to
okay,
read
go ahead and read it.
And this is just the last couple of sentences. This is from the Players Tribune. He wrote about taking over the job and what it means to him and all of that. And so here's what he had to say in one of the paragraphs. We all know there's something different about Notre Dame. We all know it's something special. And I just thank God that I didn't make the wrong decision twice. Alluding to the fact that perhaps he made the wrong decision when he chose Ohio State, because that's what he talks about in the previous paragraph about choosing Ohio State when he had a choice to make. And I can just read it. I had a choice to make, and in the end, what it came down to is Ohio State or Notre Dame, and I chose Ohio State. And so the next paragraph is, I just didn't want to make the same. I'm glad I didn't make the wrong decision twice. And so what do we make of that, where Marcus Freeman, a Buckeye, I believe, I assume an Ohio State graduate, can confidently assume that, talking about how it was a mistake to choose Ohio State, and then also wasn't a mistake to take the Notre Dame job over perhaps doing something with Ohio State. Because he also mentioned in this thing how he talked to Ryan Day 2 days ago about, and Ryan Day gave him advice, you have to be yourself. So I'm assuming, because we know there was some talking, and I'm guessing Marcus Freeman called him to tell him that he was taking the Notre Dame job. And my thinking is, well, congratulations. And Marcus is like, do you have any advice? Yeah, be yourself. And maybe that's how all of that went. That's just me speculating. But him talking about Ohio State being a mistake and Notre Dame, this is just, whether he believes it or not, it's certainly pandering to the Notre Dame base. And that's something that all coaches do, especially if they're talking to their family. It's just what they do. And you do it to excite the home crowd and get them fired up. Jim Tressel, 310 days. You could call that pandering as well. It's just something that new coaches do. And I don't, should people take offense to it? Sure. That yes. No, it's typical of head coaches.
Well, and guess what? Ohio State, we've talked before about the fact that Ohio State and Notre Dame are crossing paths on the recruiting trail a lot at this point. So, that quote was not aimed at you, dear listener. random, or random Ohio State fan. That quote was aimed at people like Luke Montgomery, who is a Findlay, Ohio kid, like Marcus was a Dayton kid who, is choosing presumably between Ohio State and Notre Dame. Well, guess what? Guess where Marcus Freeman wants Luke Montgomery to go to college? I bet it's not Ohio State. So that's who that comment was aimed at. Now, as for the validity of that comment, okay, let's review Marcus Freeman's coaching career. Marcus Freeman, his first Power 5 job was on the staff of Darrell Hazell. Darrell Hazell was an assistant under Jim Tressel. Who did Marcus Freeman play for? Jim Tressel. Okay. So you think that's a staggering coincidence? My suspicion is that is not, in fact, a staggering coincidence. Then Marcus Freeman got to be the defensive coordinator for Darrell Hazell at Purdue. Then Marcus Freeman went to go coach under Luke Fickell at Cincinnati to be the defensive coordinator at Cincinnati. Luke Fickell, also an assistant under Jim Tressel. Now, maybe those are both staggering coincidences. Maybe. And maybe Marcus Freeman would have been able to ride the Charlie Weis coaching tree and or Ty Willingham coaching tree to the Notre Dame head coaching job in the year of our Lord 2021. I suspect that he would not. I suspect that the path that Marcus Freeman has chosen has worked out just fine for him. And in an honest moment, Marcus Freeman would probably look back and go, you know what? Those guys were, in fact, tied to Ohio State. Actually, it turns out that both of the former assistant coaches or head coaches who I worked under to start my defensive coaching career were both former Ohio State assistants who were assistants under my head coach at Ohio State. That's a staggering coincidence. But, hey, maybe what he means is he doesn't really want to be Notre Dame's head coach. And so look at the mistakes that I have made. Look at the path that I have taken from Jim Tressel to Darrell Hazell to Luke Fickell. And now here, look upon me in despair, all ye. I have to live in South Bend, Indiana. Maybe that's what he means. It could be either one. Who's to say?
Yeah, I think he's taking the job to be a cautionary tale for everybody else. Don't let this happen to you.
Mm-hmm.
It's always funny when, and you've made this, you've had this great career, and who knows where it would have gone without being a Buckeye and knowing those guys. And the same with players who, and parents who aren't necessarily appreciative of the opportunity that college football has given them, and all they do is criticize it. It's like, yeah, but do you realize that the check you're cashing from the NFL right now has come from, in some part, the steps that you took to get there, including whatever college you went to. And, where would Marcus Freeman be right now if he had not gone to Ohio State? I doubt he is the head coach at Notre Dame. And as you mentioned, the Charlie Weis coaching tree, I am trying to think of a single Charlie Weis assistant coach, and I can't come up with any.
I'm not going to lie. I Googled Ty Willingham coaching tree earlier, and Google's like, did you mean Ty Willingham coaching record? Or it was like, no, there was nowhere in the world does the phrase Ty Willingham coaching tree come up anywhere. So
did you mean pine tree?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there is a rich assortment of people off of his wonderful Washington teams, but no. Did David Shaw maybe coach under him at Stanford? I don't think so. I think Shaw was under just Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Yeah. I literally can't think of a Ty Willingham assistant. There's probably someone very obvious. And it's like, oh yeah, whatever. Bill Belichick coach under Ty Willingham. Like what? How did that? I don't remember that. Charlie Weis was, he was on the Bill Belichick coaching tree. He was not at the top of it though. He was the dense root ball of the Bill Belichick coaching tree.
Now I have to look up Charlie Weis coaching tree.
Make sure Safe Search is on.
Come on, Tom. Part of his Wikipedia page, I'm not seeing any coaching tree, which is rare because they usually have that sort of thing. No, but I'm sure it's there with many branches and very deep roots. Oh, Charlie Weis Jr. I don't know if that counts though. That's an acorn.
Has he done any? Where was he? He was at Florida Atlantic. Wasn't he at Florida Atlantic under Lane Kiffin?
Maybe. I'm looking in South Florida.
Mm-hmm.
So there you go. I'm just looking at these headlines. Charlie Weis is wanted in the NFL, and I'm thinking, who'd he kill?
What's a moita? All right, we continue to derail ourselves. It's only gonna get further off track here. From at Dave Grote, 87. And you can explain the context to this question when I'm done reading it. If our defense was a cheese this year, what would it be? Now that Knowles is our DC, what kind do you expect it to be next year?
Dave is a fantastic cheese man, an artisan, if you will. In fact, if the Ohio State defense was a cheese this year, what would it be, Tom? I know a lot of people are going to say Swiss cheese, but I'm going to say Velveeta because it melts so easily into liquid form. It just a little bit of heat, boom, liquid. And now that Knowles is the defensive coordinator, what kind do I expect it to be next year? I will say, how about this? I'm going to say, and I don't know fancy cheeses. I only know Northwest Ohio cheeses that I grew up, deli cheeses, but also those are fancy cheeses from where I come from. A Colby cheese, not the best. It's a little bitter, but it does not melt that great. It's kind of an oily, and it's not something to use on nachos or anything like that. So it's not a melting cheese. It can be kind of stiff if it's left out in a deli tray for too long over the course of an entire family event, where later on it maybe even snaps a little because it gets a little hard on the outside. That's what you want to do. Leave the defense out a little, let it get hard on the outside, and make sure you got some good summer sausage to go with it. And so that's where I'm at now. Again, Tom, I am basic cheeses. You're talking to a guy, and my wife hates it when I call American cheese a cheese. She's like, no, American cheese is not a cheese. I'm like, well, it says it right here, cheese food, right on the label.
And here's where I'm deeply annoyed. I also was going to have Velveeta because I thought for sure he's going to say Swiss. And then I can say Velveeta because it's a solid block until you turn up the heat and then it melts. But no. Okay. Well, no, that's disappointing. I will. I would grow up a place with indoor plumbing and electricity, so I will have a better answer for the cheese for next year. Tony, and I'm going to ask a question. Something, this is like in the morning scoop, or sometimes I'm asking questions that I know the answer to, but just to facilitate the conversation. Tony, have you ever had water buffalo cheese?
I have not, Tom.
Okay. Well, water buffalo cheese is actually quite delicious. It is very rich and creamy, but it is very unexpected. It is very different. It is a little bit, you say water buffalo cheese. It's very unpredictable. You have no idea what you're getting. I feel like that's the Jim Knowles defense. Like, it's going to be pretty good, but it's going to be very different. It's going to be a little unpredictable. It is not going to be the same basic thing. Like, he has a very, he will move. We talked about on yesterday's show, the Leo guy, where it's, sort of the weak side defensive end, linebacker defensive end type guy. He'll move that guy all around. I'm going to have Ross Fulton on the morning scoop on Friday morning to kind of talk about this in a little more detail in a more intelligent way. We probably won't bring it up, involving cheeses, but we'll see. You never know with Ross.
You have to.
Ross, first question. If you had to describe Jim Knowles' defensive philosophy in terms of a cheese, but yeah, I think it's a little unpredictable. You have no idea what you're going to get, but it's like, oh, this is actually pretty good. And 2022 Ohio State defense, rich and creamy. There you go. You heard it. You heard it here first.
I'm trying to think of some sort of a cheese that's great in a bowl. Which
Cheez-Its.
There you go. Perfect. I
was wearing my Cheez-It Bowl pullover on yesterday's show. Why did we not plan this out better? This is terrible.
Tom, why did we not plan this out better?
Sorry.
Is this your first day on the show?
I'm new here. Sorry.
All right, go ahead.
Next one from @B_Minnick. How is Knowles as recruiter, and with his addition, who will be gone on the staff?
Tom, I'll let you take the second part.
and he's not someone who has this incredible history as a recruiter. You go through his team. I mean, I talked earlier on the Monday's show, Tuesday show, whenever it was Tuesday show, about the fact that they had one player ranked as 8.9 or higher on their team on defense at Oklahoma State. He's also, Oklahoma State, Duke, like these are not places where you're drawing in incredible talent. Like these are not recruiting hotbeds. So we'll see how he does as recruiter at Ohio State. It'll be kind of interesting to see that because he's someone who, all his past players are talking about how personable he is, how much they love him. He seems like he should be someone who's a good recruiter, but it hasn't really happened yet. But I don't know that that's necessarily the point. Like you can have your recruiting guys, and your recruiting guys can bring the talent in, and then his job is to just make them work, make them work, make, take the ingredients and make a fantastic dinner. Take all of the different cheeses, melt them together, a delicious fondue of defense on the field for you. I don't know that I'm super concerned about his recruiting, because I think, you have other guys on the staff who are going to have to, pull some of the slack with the recruiting, but I don't think that's really what they're bringing him in for. And as far as who on the staff is going to be gone, that's sort of an open question, because Bill Green earlier in the week was asked about that on the board and said, you could make a case for just about anyone going or anyone staying. And is Larry Johnson going to stick around for another year? Or is Larry Johnson going to call it a career? That you don't know for sure. Is Matt Barnes going to be welcomed back, or is Matt Barnes going to even want to come back? Is Kerry Combs going to want to come back? Is Al Washington going to want to come? There's a lot of possibilities. And how much input is Knowles going to have on the defensive staff? That's the other question, because they were willing to throw him a lot of money. Were they willing to throw him kind of total control over the defense? And is he going to want to bring in some of his own guys, or some other people who might have different, better fit what he wants to do? So that is a long answer to say, oh,
yeah. And that's why I left it for you, because I've said the same thing. Just there's so many things where I could see this guy leaving. You could see everybody leaving, or you can also see everybody coming back, and to start to get into a guessing game. And that's what it is. Because, I haven't heard one way or another about who's coming back. And you wonder, will guys have to be talked into coming back or talked into leaving? And there's just so many plates still spinning. And right now I'm looking at the Oklahoma State recruiting classes since 2018. Now, you can go to 24/7 and look at recruiter rankings and all, career recruits. And Jim Knowles has never signed or recruited a 4-star guy. And that's because he's coached at Cornell and Duke and Oklahoma State. And as evidence, I'm just looking at Oklahoma State's classes since 2018. They've signed 2 total 4-star defensive players. And that was in the 2021 class, I think a defensive back and a defensive lineman. So it's just now something they do. And I went back to 2018 and looked, and because that's when Knowles arrived, just to get an idea. And I do expect that to change for Knowles at Ohio State, where now, and we talk about this anytime somebody comes in from a smaller school, which is where they all generally come from, because there aren't many schools bigger than Ohio State. You get into anywhere you want to go. Your shirt, your jersey, the coach's jerseys that they wear, it'll get them into any school. And you get to talk to all kinds of prospects, and you're just shopping at you're no longer, and no disrespect, you're no longer shopping in a buy here, pay here, used car lot. You're actually, at this point, you're just almost maybe shopping from a catalog and say, yes, ship the car to me. Yes, ship this nice one to me, because I'm not going to go to Italy to shop for a car. I'll just look here in this pamphlet and pick the one I want. And that's, that's kind of what he's walking into now. Not only do you have all of the current players, now you get to start recruiting. And from watching the videos, he seems like a really, really personable guy. Players really like him. Seems like a bit of a different guy, where I think you like that, because he's not just this stone Billy Davis football block tackle, best wishes on your wedding, that sort of thing.
You beat me at the wedding, and I'm so mad right now. I will point out that Mike Krzyzewski has no problem recruiting at Duke, so I'm not sure why you're making excuses for Jim Knowles. Just saying. Last one for the show at DGK 24-129. I never thought I'd see coaches use schools like Oklahoma and Notre Dame as a stepping stone to get more cash. It couldn't happen to OSU with Ryan Day, could it?
You know what? I think here's the thing. If a coach wants a lot of money, he can get that in college. If he wants a lot of money, he can get that guilt-free in the NFL. Because at some point in college football, I think there's going to come a point where, and maybe we're already there with the $95 million contracts, and it's like, should you be doing this in the amateurism of college and universities, and it kind of looks bad. But if you're in that market and you're thinking, I deserve $80 million from Ohio State, but I could get 130 from the Bears. Like that's, I don't expect Brian Day to leave, but I think it's clear there are now schools that used to be the final destination. The final destination is how much can you pay at one of those final destination schools or in the NFL. So it just depends on how guilt-free are you, like how comfortable are you paying somebody $12 million in college? Because I don't think Notre Dame is comfortable doing that. I don't think Ohio State is comfortable doing that until they have to. As we've seen, Gene Smith not comfortable paying the $1 million assistant coaches until he had to get comfortable. If you're in the race, you gotta pay for everything, the tires, the engine, the driver, all of that stuff. It's not cheap to do this. And I don't think Day's going anywhere, but I do think it could happen to Ohio State.
Well, and here's the other piece of this. Let's reframe this conversation a little bit, because I don't know that Lincoln Riley or Brian Kelly left solely for the money. I think that they both left for places they felt they have a better chance to, a better path to the playoff, a better path to potentially advance in the playoff than at their current homes. I don't think it's a coincidence that these two places that are, among the top, whatever, however you want to categorize them, top 10, top 15 jobs in the sport, that they have a combined 0 career historical college football playoff wins. Not a one between the two of them. And they were sort of capped in some of the same ways in terms of talent, in terms of access to players. There are different limitations in those two places, but there are some limitations in both of those two places. Oklahoma going to, you look at Oklahoma. Oklahoma was getting slightly further away every time they got to the playoff under Lincoln Riley. They had the game against Georgia in the Rose Bowl that went to overtime and they should have won, and then they didn't win. And then you go through the years and it's like, oh, it just keeps getting, they're not getting closer. They're getting further away. And, they got annihilated by LSU a couple of years ago in the playoff. Notre Dame was never competitive in the playoff. And, so those coaches, I think, were going places where you have a better chance to, at least advance in the playoff, if not win the whole enchilada. I don't, you don't have those limitations at Ohio State. So, unless Ryan Day really, really, Boston College wants to make him a Godfather offer to go back to the Northeast, like, okay, sure. If you want to go do that, like, okay. How many jobs are better set up for for success throughout a conference? You are in a winnable conference, as demonstrated by the fact that they won it 4 years in a row. You have access to talent in state without a comparable in-state program to battle against, because everyone, there's 4 Cincinnati fans going, well, we're in the playoff this year. Well, okay, let me know the next time Cincinnati beats Ohio State for a 5-star in-state kid.
It's okay to use your Southern accent on the Cincinnati stuff, by the way.
Right? Yeah, I was trying to modify it like I had chili on my shirt, but we'll see. You have the in-state talent. You have the winnable conference. You have, the Ohio State has demonstrated they can get to the playoff. They can advance in the playoff. You have seen Ohio State win the national championship in the playoff. You have seen Ohio State win the national championship in the BCS. I mean, this is a school where you can win at the high, at whatever level you can get this team to. There is no glass ceiling above you like there is potentially at a Notre Dame, at an Oklahoma, and especially at an Oklahoma where you're about to go to the SEC. The road to the college football playoff is about to get a lot harder for Oklahoma, because the 11-1 seasons are now maybe 9-3 seasons, because now instead of playing TCU and Baylor and Iowa State, it's like, well, now you got to play Texas A&M, and now you got to play Alabama, and now you got to play Arkansas. And, some seasons those are going to be, comparable to the Big 12 schedule, and some seasons it's going to be a lot harder. It's going to be a lot easier for Oklahoma to start going 8-4 and 9-3 in the SEC than it is to continue going 11-1 every year. And then all of a sudden you got a job security problem, because then you're the guy who, well, we used to win 11 games every year. Now we're only winning 9. This guy stinks. We're trending in the wrong direction. We've got to fire him. And ta-da, and now you're out on your butt. And so guess what? The road to the playoff out of the Pac-12 South, if you are a fully operational USC, is a heck of a lot easier than it is in the SEC West as an Oklahoma team, because the USC has by far the most advantageous position in the Pac-12 South. Oklahoma is like the fourth best job in the SEC West once that all goes through in a couple of years. Third, fourth. I mean, you got an uphill climb there because you're in the division with LSU, you're in a division with Alabama, Texas A&M. I mean, that is all of a sudden you are no longer in the penthouse. You're living in a bigger building, but you're kind of on one of the middle floors now. And if you're used to living in the penthouse, like, I'm not sure if the view has gotten better.
Wonder if we see Alabama or Auburn move over to the east there. But yeah, I agree, Tom. Those are both smart decisions football wise, just as much as they were smart decisions financially. So that will do it for this episode. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Thank you guys for the questions. We've got some more coming in the next show. And again, unless something happens, and something very well may happen. So if you don't hear the next listener questions show tomorrow, you better hope something happened good rather than something bad. That's all I'm going to say. So I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.